Good morning. The 98th plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. Before proceeding to the items on our agenda, I would like, in keeping with established practice, to draw the attention of the General Assembly to document A/75/661 Addendum 5, in which the Secretary General informs the President of the General Assembly that since the issuance of his communication contained in document A/73/722 Addendum 4, the Central African Republic has made the payment necessary to reduce its arrears below the amount specified in Article 19 of the Charter. May I take it that the General Assembly duly takes note of the information contained in document A/75/661 Addendum 5. Is so decided. The General Assembly will resume its consideration of Agenda Item 131, entitled Global Health and Foreign Policy, to take action on a draft resolution issued as document A/75/L120 and draft amendment A/75/L124. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom to introduce draft amendment A/75/L124. You have the floor.
Many thanks indeed, Madam President. It's always good to see you in the chair. And good morning to colleagues. We are, as ever, very grateful to the co-facilitators, Japan and Guyana, for all of their work on this text, and we look forward to the high-level meeting on universal health coverage in 2023. But in proposing this amendment today, we come back to the very fundamental question of how this General Assembly regulates the participation of civil society in our high-level meetings. Now, we have voted 4 times now on what the GA thinks is a good solution. And this good solution is in operative paragraph 10 of the resolution before us. And this paragraph, as it stands, provides for the following process. It allows the PGA to provide us, the General Assembly, with a list of relevant civil society organizations. He already does this, of course, in consultation with the Secretariat. If a member state wishes to object to the participation of one of those civil society organizations on that list, they can make this known to the GA, and then we, the GA, can take a decision, a final decision, on whether that organization can participate. This process puts decision-making in all of our hands, not the hands of one member state and not the hands of the Secretariat. And it means that we get to hear from those civil society organizations that we want to hear from, and we get to exclude those we don't think are appropriate. It's a good system. We voted for it 4 times. It's in OP10. With the support of several countries, we're today proposing, and this is our amendment, to delete OP11. We do this because OP11 represents a departure from the approach set out in OP10. And in doing so, it seeks to take away decision-making power from the General Assembly. And let's be clear, this paragraph, a new paragraph, new language, has been inserted into this resolution at the behest of those 30-odd states who have consistently voted against OP10. And they vote against OP10 because they don't like civil society and they want to be able to control the access of civil society to our meetings. Their objective is clear. We are of the view, and again, this is why we wish to delete OP11, we are of the view that OP11 is confusing and ambiguous. And if I may, Madam Chair, I will briefly read it to us. It requests the Secretary-General to assist the PGA with the support of other relevant entities of the UN system as appropriate, particularly the WHO, in drawing up lists referred to in paragraph 10, our paragraph, through screening and evaluation of the requests to ensure relevance to attend the high-level meeting. Now, the question I think for us is, who are the relevant entities? What is appropriate? What is the mechanism critically for screening and evaluation? What is the standard for relevance? Who is making these judgments on our behalf when we know from our own experience on HIV/AIDS that we are perfectly capable of making these judgments ourselves? It inserts an unnecessary step into this process. It creates confusion, unnecessary work for the Secretariat, and ultimately undermines the role of the General Assembly. So, a reminder. The language in OP10 is your language. It's the language found in all three of the most recent consensus modality resolutions. OP11 is yet another attempt to degrade the language in OP10, to take power and decisions out of our hands and give them to others. So I urge the General Assembly to stick to our existing position. We call on member states to support this amendment so that we can hear from all relevant voices in our fight for universal health coverage. We depend on your support. Please vote in favor of our amendment. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the UK for her statement. We shall now proceed to consider draft resolution A/75/L120 and draft amendment A/75/L124. In this connection, I would like to give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam President. This oral statement is made in accordance with Rule 153 of the Rules of Procedure of the General Assembly. Under the terms of operative paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and 14 of draft resolution A/75/L120, the General Assembly would, in OP1, decide that the one-day high-level meeting on universal health coverage to be convened by the President of the General Assembly shall be held at the United Nations headquarters in New York on the third day of the general debate of the Assembly at its 78th session from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and consist of an opening segment, a plenary segment for general discussion, 2 multi-stakeholder panels, and a brief closing segment. In OP2, also decide that the opening segment to be held from 10 to 10:30 a.m. will feature statements by the President of the General Assembly at its 78th session, the Secretary General, the Director General of the World Health Organization, the President of the World Bank Group, as well as an eminent high-level champion of universal health coverage selected in consultation with member states by the President of the General Assembly, giving due consideration to gender balance. The plenary segment to be held from 10:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. will comprise statements by member states and observers of the General Assembly. A list of speakers will be established in accordance with established practices of the Assembly, and the time limits for these statements will be 3 minutes for individual delegations and 5 minutes for statements made on behalf of a group of states. The closing segment, to be held from 5:30 to 6 p.m., will comprise summaries of the multi-stakeholder panels and concluding remarks by the President of the General Assembly. In OP3, further decide that the organizational arrangements for the 2 multi-stakeholder panels will be as follows. 2 multi-stakeholder panels will be held in parallel to the plenary segment, one from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., the other from 3 to 5 p.m. Each of the 2 multi-stakeholder panels will be co-chaired by 2 representatives, one from a developed country and one from a developing country, to be appointed by the President of the General Assembly from among the heads of state and or government attending the high-level meeting in consultation with member states, taking into account gender balance, level of development, and geographical representation. The themes of the multi-stakeholder panels will take into consideration the decision and outcomes of other preceding health processes and initiatives, as well as the interactive multi-stakeholder hearing with a view to ensuring the most effective and efficient outcomes and potential deliverables, and to sharing experiences and lessons learned to address remaining implementation gaps. The President of the General Assembly may invite parliamentarians, local governments, the heads of senior representatives of relevant United Nations entities, including World Health Organization and the World Bank, development partners, civil society, the private sector, academia, medical associations, indigenous leadership representative organizations of persons with disabilities, and community organizers to serve as speakers on the panels, taking into account gender balance, level of development, geopolitical representation, and the representation of youth and older persons. In OP14, decide that the proceedings of the high-level meeting and the multi-stakeholder hearings shall be webcast, and encourage the President of the General Assembly, the Secretary General, and the Director General of the World Health Organization to give the highest visibility to the high-level meeting through all relevant media platforms and information and communication technologies. With regard to operative paragraphs 1 and 2 of the draft resolution, it is currently envisaged that the one-day high-level meeting on universal health coverage to be held in New York in 2023 would consist of 3 meetings if meetings are held in person without sufficient significant virtual components, or of 4 meetings if meetings are in virtual or hybrid format, with interpretation in all 6 official languages. These would constitute an addition to the meeting workload of the Department for General Assembly and Conference Management, DGSCM, in 2023, whereby additional requirements for meeting services would arise in the amount of $22,000. Furthermore, with regard to operative paragraphs 1 and 3 of the draft resolution, it is envisaged that the 2 multi-stakeholder panels to be held in parallel to the plenary segment of the high-level meeting would consist of 2 meetings, either in person or in virtual or hybrid format, with interpretation in all 6 languages. These would constitute an addition to the meeting workload of DGSCM in 2023, whereby additional requirements for meeting services would arise in the amount of $11,000. Also, with regard to operative paragraph 14 of draft resolution, proceedings of the high-level meeting and the multi-stakeholder hearing would require resources for webcast services, including UNTV, and press coverage in the amount of $13,700. Accordingly, should the General Assembly adopt draft resolution A/75/L120, additional resources requirements currently estimated in the amounts of $33,000 under Section 2, General Assembly and Economic and Social Council Affairs and Conference Management, and $13,700 under Section 28, Global Communications, would be included in the proposed program budget for 2023. The statement I just read was distributed through the plenary place on the e-delegate portal and will be made available in the journal and the e-statements link of this meeting. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. Before we proceed to take a decision on draft resolution A/75/L120, and draft amendment A/75/L124, delegations wishing to make a statement in the explanation of vote before the vote on the draft resolution and/or the draft amendment are invited to do so in one intervention. Is there anybody?
Yes, so there are speakers here. So.
Okay. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote, before the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. The first speaker is the Ambassador of Guyana, distinguished representative of Guyana. You have the floor, please.
Madam President, I make this statement on behalf of Ambassador Ishikan of Japan and on my own behalf. At the outset, we would like to thank the President of the General Assembly for entrusting us with the responsibility to serve as co-facilitators and conduct intergovernmental consultations on the modalities of the high-level meeting on universal health coverage, which will be held in 2023 in New York. The high-level meeting will undertake a comprehensive review on the implementation of the UHC 2019 Political Declaration to identify gaps and solutions to accelerate progress towards the achievement of universal health coverage by 2030. Over the past year and a half, the need for accelerated action on universal health coverage has become even more pronounced because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Strong health systems built to deliver universal health coverage and supported by sufficient financial and human resources are fundamental to ensuring the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health for all, including as a critical defense against disease outbreaks. Even before the pandemic, the world was off track to meet SDG target 3.8 on UHC, with at least half of the world's population unable to access the essential health services they needed, and approximately 100 million people being pushed into poverty each year due to catastrophic healthcare expenditure, a situation further compounded by the pandemic. The high-level meeting in 2023 will provide an opportunity to thoroughly examine the impact of the pandemic on health systems and discuss the actions needed to build stronger health systems and ultimately achieve UHC. The draft resolution presented for adoption today is a procedural text that outlines the scope, modalities, and format of the follow-up meeting. It provides for a similar format as the 2019 high-level meeting, a general debate with parallel multi-stakeholder panels. Unlike the 2019 modalities resolution, there is a time frame of 10:30 to 5:30 p.m. for the plenary segment without a break. This is in an effort to allow more member states to address the meeting and in recognition of recent challenges in this regard. The high-level meeting will approve a political declaration agreed in advance by consensus. To ensure relevance, the Zero draft calls for preparations, including around the theme and substance of the panels, to be finalized during the 77th session, closer to the date of the meeting. Recognizing the critical contribution of stakeholders across sectors to the attainment of UHC, the resolution seeks to bring together governments, academia, civil society, private sector, and other professional groups to align agendas and actions towards common goals. Indeed, the paragraphs in the resolution related to civil society and NGO participation were the most actively discussed during the consultations. As facilitators, we listened keenly to the views of all delegations, and we considered that a combination of OP10 and OP11 represents the best balance of the different positions. OP10 is the most recent language used in the modalities resolutions for CSO participation, whereby the General Assembly makes the final decision on participation from a list prepared by the President of the Assembly of representatives of relevant non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, academic institutions, and the private sector. A new paragraph, OP11, has been added that factually describes how the list in OP10 is prepared. Specifically, that the list is to be drawn up by the President of the General Assembly with the support of the Secretariat and the relevant UN entities, particularly the World Health Organization, following screening and evaluation to determine relevance to attend the meeting. OP11 is a facilitator's proposal, which emanated from discussions with the relevant UN entities. We reiterate that OP11 is a factual representation of how the list of relevant CSOs is prepared and only stipulates the criterion of relevance, which is also stated in OP10. Madam President, it should be noted that silence was broken on both paragraphs, and there were extensive discussions with the concerned delegations. It is our fervent hope that this resolution, which sets the tone for a very important meeting on universal health coverage, will be adopted by consensus, and that delegations will support the text as presented by the facilitators without amendment. We take this opportunity to thank all delegations for their active engagement and participation throughout the process. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Guyana for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation. You have the floor.
Уважаемая госпожа председатель, от лица делегаций Российской Федерации, Китайской Народной Республики, Сирийской Арабской Республики, Республики Беларусь, Исламской Республики Иран, Боливарианской Республики Венесуэла и Республики Куба вынуждены выразить несогласие с поправкой А/75Л-124. Оперативный параграф 11 проекта резолюции о модальностях заседания высокого уровня Генеральной Ассамблеи ООН по всеобщему охвату услугами здравоохранения не вводит никаких новых реалий в процесс подготовки этого мероприятия. Этот пункт лишь фиксирует сложившуюся и десятилетиями применяемую практику рассмотрения заявок неправительственных партнеров без консультативного статуса при ИКСОС на присутствие в ходе заседаний высокого уровня Генассамблеи. Его цель – обеспечить транспарентность относительно того, как формируется исходный список неправительственных структур, что позволит четко и полно, а не выборочно прописать упомянутую процедуру. Подчеркну, что оперативный параграф 11 не может вызвать каких бы то ни было ограничений на привлечение к заседанию специализированных неправительственных организаций, так как он не вводит никаких дополнительных процедур или критериев отбора. Изучение заявок для исходного списка находится в руках секретариата ООН и Офиса председателя Генеральной Ассамблеи, которые должны обеспечивать его соответствие принципам ООН. Сходные положения предусмотрены для организации конференции ООН в резолюции ИКСОС 1996/31, которая является основой для отношений Всемирной организации с неправительственными организациями. Обращаем внимание на то, что оперативный параграф 11 уже является компромиссом. На переговорах под давлением ряда делегаций из него, к сожалению, была вычеркнута формулировка о соблюдении целей и принципов Устава ООН. Тем не менее, даже в неизменном виде этот параграф содействует повышению открытости процесса. Благодарим координаторов переговоров, послов Гайаны и Японии за их усилия по нахождению взаимоприемлемых развязок в духе нейтральности, беспристрастности и учета интересов всех сторон. Сожалеем, что, несмотря на конструктивный настрой многих делегаций, авторы проекта поправки А/75Л124 сделали выбор не в пользу сбалансированных, взаимоприемлемых решений. Считаем это упущенной возможностью урегулировать противоречия на этот счет в Генеральной Ассамблее. Уважаемая госпожа председатель, просим поставить указанный проект поправки на голосование и призываем проголосовать против данной поправки. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Slovenia on behalf of the European Union. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. The candidate countries, the Republic of North Macedonia and Albania, the country of the stabilization and association process and potential candidate Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova and Georgia, aligned themselves with the statement. We would like to thank the President of the General Assembly and the co-facilitators, Japan and Guyana, for their efforts. Agreeing on the modalities for the high-level meeting today is an important milestone for the high-level meeting on universal health care, and therefore we welcome the resolution. Let me turn to the importance of civil society participation in this high-level meeting, a high priority for the European Union, and the reason for us to co-sponsor, together with others, in a broad cross-regional initiative, an amendment requesting the deletion of OP11. In our view, the language in OP11 was not previously agreed, and frankly speaking, it was not properly negotiated. Although the EU voiced strong concerns about this paragraph and requested further consultations when breaking the silence, no further meaningful engagement took place. OP11 creates a new role for the Secretariat in screening CSO applicants that is inconsistent with previous practice. Furthermore, the EU believes the language is extremely vague and creates many unanswered questions. It neither specifies on what basis and criteria the evaluation should take place, nor what the consequences of such screening and evaluation process are to be. This is not acceptable when dealing with such an important question and potentially limiting the scope of decision-making by the General Assembly on the matter. The EU feels this particular paragraph attempts to detract from and weaken the highly important language on CSO participation in OP10. OP10 clearly states the Office of the President of the General Assembly puts forward the list of CSOs. Member states then have the opportunity to consider the list, after which the General Assembly debates and decides on the matter. A perfect intergovernmental process accompanied by intergovernmental decision-making. We note that OP10 has already proven its functionality. It has not only been adopted in various previous modalities resolutions, but has also been tested in practice, and it has clearly proven that it works. For example, in the context of the HIV/AIDS high-level meeting this June, enabling an open and transparent process that gives the final decision on the list of CSOs to the General Assembly. OP11, however, reestablishes a veil of secrecy over the process through its ambiguous language and unclear implications with regard to the list presented to the General Assembly. The EU and its member states, together with many other delegations, have constantly raised strong concerns about rejections of CSOs that are exercised in an arbitrary manner. We cannot accept unclear pre-screening processes to be introduced in OP11, which may undermine the transparency of the intergovernmental decision-making process according to OP10. Universal health care is a matter of concern to all. It is not only fundamental for achieving SDG 3, but also to the eradication of poverty in all its forms and dimensions, the achievement of gender equality and women's empowerment, and many other goals across the 2030 Agenda. Universal health care is furthermore crucial to ensure the right of every human being without distinction of any kind to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. CSO activities have played a crucial role and contributed extensively, as demonstrated by their active participation in the 2019 high-level meeting on universal healthcare and the Africa Health Agenda International Conference 2021. CSOs, like the more than 850 organizations under the Civil Society Engagement Mechanism for UHC 2030, influence decision-making through advocacy, provide essential capacity building in the Global South, and represent the voice of the marginalized and the vulnerable. The high-level meeting will discuss how to achieve universal healthcare, ensuring that all individuals and communities have access to the quality essential health services they need without suffering financial hardship. The COVID-19 pandemic, which, among other things, has threatened and hindered the ability of health systems to provide other essential health services in many countries around the world, has demonstrated that this discussion has become ever more important. To inform us, we need to hear experiences from all involved. We cannot afford to let important experiences go unheard. We cannot afford to miss out on the support of any stakeholder when it comes to universal healthcare. The COVID pandemic has shown that when it comes to health, that it is indeed very much an issue that belongs to all. The leading OP11 constitutes a return to recently agreed modalities for high-level meetings and well-established modalities of previous years in the UN. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Slovenia on behalf of the EU. And by this, we have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote before the vote. Before proceeding further, I would like to inform you that draft amendment A/75/L124 has closed for co-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam President. I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft amendment, and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the following countries have also become co-sponsors of A/75/L124. Albania, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Georgia, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Latvia, Luxembourg, Malta, Monaco, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and Ukraine. If any other countries wish to co-sponsor draft amendment A/75/L124, please signify by pressing the microphone button now. I see Montenegro. If the delegation of Montenegro can turn off the microphone button, if that's done. No other delegation. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat for his statement. Before we proceed to take a decision on draft resolution A/75/L120, in accordance with Rule 90 of the Rules of Procedure, the Assembly shall first take a decision on draft amendment A/75/L124.
And the next page, because Russia has already.
A recorded vote has been requested on draft amendment A/75/L124. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of draft amendment A/75/L124, please signify. Those against, abstentions.
The General Assembly is now voting on draft amendment A/75/L124. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen? I see the delegations of Sweden and Switzerland pressing the button. Now only Switzerland. Is Switzerland having difficulty signifying the vote, or? It's pressing the microphone button. Now Switzerland's microphone button is off, so I suppose now again on. Delegations are requested to press the yes, no, abstention button, not the microphone button, to vote. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 64, against 43, abstentions 33. Draft Amendment A/75/L124 is adopted. Okay, thank you. Since Draft Amendment A/75/L124 is adopted, we shall proceed to take a decision on Draft Resolution A/75/L120 as amended. I now give the floor to the representative of China on a point of order. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. I have the honor to introduce an oral amendment on operative paragraph 10, which is jointly proposed by the Republic of Belarus, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Russian Federation, the Syrian Arab Republic, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and my own country, China. Our proposal is to delete the last part of operative paragraph 10, which reads, I quote, "and to bring the list to the attention of the Assembly for a final decision by the Assembly on participation in the high-level meeting," end of quote. Therefore, the whole paragraph will end after the phrase non-objection basis. Madam President, we thank the permanent representatives of Guyana and Japan for their efforts as the co-facilitators of the draft resolution and look forward to the upcoming high-level meeting to renew our commitment to achieving universal health coverage and promoting the well-being for all. We always welcome and appreciate the important contribution made by civil society, including non-governmental organizations, in engaging constructively with member states and the UN system, and are glad to see that currently around 6,000 NGOs are enjoying active consultative status with ECSOC. We are also pleased to see that in the past years, the General Assembly has come up with a practice of non-objection basis based on consensus to ensure the participation of NGOs without ECSOC consultative status while respecting the rules of procedure of the General Assembly and the intergovernmental nature of its work. This practice has been successfully worked for many years. However, we regret that since this February, this decades-long consensus was broken. The established rules of procedures and methods of work of the UN were challenged. Unnecessary division was provoked, and the unity and solidarity among member states were undermined. Therefore, Belarus, China, the Islamic Republic of Iran, the Russian Federation, the Syrian Arab Republic, and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, propose the oral amendment to delete the controversial, unconsensual language in operative paragraph 10. We call on all member states to vote in favor of this oral amendment. We call on all member states to vote in favor of unity, solidarity, and consensus. We call on all member states to vote in favor of the established rules of procedure of the GA and the intergovernmental nature of its work. We call on all member states to vote in favor of the established practice of UN negotiations and avoid unnecessary division. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of China for her statement. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the UK to make a statement.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam President. I think this oral amendment proposed by China on behalf of a group of states reveals to us their true intentions, both in the proposal of OP11 just defeated, but with respect to civil society more broadly. But first I want to tackle a couple of erroneous statements just made in the words put before me. The first is that the language in OP10 is somehow controversial and a break with previous practice. This is not the case. The language in OP10 is a return to the practice of the GA and the long-established practice of the GA prior to 2012, when this language was first amended. And it was amended in 2012 to try to restrict the access of civil society organizations. So there's no way in which OP10, as it currently stands in this resolution, is controversial. The second suggestion was that this language doesn't have consensus support, OP10, as it stands. It is true that some states have, over the last 4 modalities resolutions, challenged this language. That's absolutely true. And we have voted on this language. But in previous votes, over 90 members of the General Assembly have voted in favor of this language, and a few, over 30, have voted against this language. So it's clear where the majority of support in this GA resides. So the suggestion that we are creating unnecessary division in the GA is, of course, nonsense. We are simply proposing a paragraph which has the majority support of this GA. But my biggest concern, Madam President, is what's behind this amendment by the Chinese and others. Because what they're trying to delete is the last part of this paragraph. And that part of this paragraph is to bring the list to the attention of the Assembly, of this General Assembly, for a final decision by the Assembly on participation. That final sentence guarantees the General Assembly's oversight, and it guarantees the democratic decision-making of this General Assembly with respect to the participation of civil society groups. And the reason that China and the states supporting them want to delete this line in our operative paragraph is because they want a veto over civil society groups, because there are people they don't want to hear from, and they want to be able to decide unilaterally to exclude those people. So what I ask you to do is to vote against the Chinese amendment, to vote in favor of access for civil society groups, to vote in favor of a paragraph that you, the GA, have confirmed your support for on 4 occasions now, and to vote for a meeting that is enjoying the full participation of civil society in a way that helps inform our discussions on this critical issue. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the UK for his statement. We have a request for a statement by the United States. I just want to ask you if this is explanation of vote, if you can please wait till the end of all the procedure decisions are taken and then you can do your statement. Is this explanation of vote after the vote, or?
This is an explanation of vote before the vote on this newly introduced amendment.
It seems that there's no rule for that you have to wait till the end after everybody has finished, if you don't mind.
Madam Vice President, this amendment was just orally introduced, and so all delegations should be able to take a position on the amendment before it is acted upon.
Yeah, it seems the Secretariat has a different view, so could you please explain to him why he cannot speak now?
Madam President, the General Assembly plenary has two windows for explanation of vote: before the vote and after the vote. When there are multiple proposals, regardless of the timing of proposal, there is one window for explanation of vote before the vote on any of the proposals, and the second window will be after action on all proposals. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank you. Is this acceptable? You can do it after the vote, after we proceed. Thank you. Okay. A recorded vote. The distinguished President of the United States wants to say something?
Yes, in such a case, the United States would like to make an explanation of vote before the vote instead of after the vote.
I'm really sorry. It seems that you cannot speak now. You have to speak after. This is according to the rules. A recorded vote has been requested on the oral. The distinguished representative of the UK is asking for the floor. Could you please explain what your request is about?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. I'm taking the floor on a point of order. I would like the Secretariat to explain on what basis he allowed me to speak. Thank you.
That was a point of order. Point of order in order to request the recorded vote on the oral amendment proposed by the delegation of China.
Okay, shall we proceed now? A recorded vote has been requested on the oral amendment proposed by the representative of China. We shall now begin the voting process. Those in favor of the oral amendment, please signify. Those against, abstentions.
The General Assembly is now voting on the oral amendment proposed by the representative of China. Will all delegations confirm that their votes are accurately reflected on the screen? The voting has been completed. Please lock the machine.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 23, against 82, abstentions 28. The oral amendment proposed by the representative of China is not adopted. Since the oral amendment proposed by the representative of China is not adopted, we shall proceed to take a decision on draft resolution A/75/L120 as amended. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/75/L120 as amended, entitled Scope, Modalities, Format, and Organization of the High-Level Meeting on Universal Health Coverage. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/75/120 as amended by 124? It's so decided. Now, before giving the floor for explanations of vote, after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. The United States engaged constructively in the negotiations for this modalities resolution, and we look forward to the 2023 high-level meeting. The COVID-19 pandemic has reinforced the critical importance of a solid global pandemic preparedness architecture, complementing strong existing health systems, including each country progressing toward achieving their own path towards universal health coverage and sustainable health financing systems. In order to achieve UHC, we must ensure that all stakeholders, including civil society, are included in the high-level meeting given their critical role on the ground. Civil society organizations continue to serve as the collective eyes and ears on the ground, providing critical information and perspectives on achieving UHC. Civil society's perspectives add great value to our efforts because they work across countries, regions, and issues, and they push each of us to do better as governments. The voices who disagree with governments are as important, if not even more important, in order to shed light on problems. With and through the meaningful involvement of a diverse and independent civil society, key populations are served and individual human rights are upheld. Without civil society voices at the table, advancements in the global efforts towards achieving universal health coverage will be less effective and ultimately incomplete. We are pleased that OP10 in its entirety remains in this resolution. OP10, which also appears in 5 recent consensual modalities resolutions, recognizes the importance of an inclusive dialogue when addressing important issues here at the UN. In the case there may be objections to the participation of an NGO, it is important that the General Assembly decide on such participation rather than a single member state or small group. Doing so increases transparency and accountability. Such decisions should not be determined behind closed doors and by the objection of one or a few member states. The General Assembly, meaning all of us, not just one or two, must consider the criteria set forth by the NGO committee in determining eligibility for participating in a meeting and push back against politicizing the work of civil society. The no objection basis, when it was introduced into the General Assembly in 2012, was brought in the hopes that it would be used properly. However, it has been abused, which is the reason why we have seen the change over the past 5 modality resolution adoptions. We are pleased to see OP11 deleted from today's text. This language was brought very late in the negotiation process with little transparency and has not appeared in any prior modalities resolutions. UN agencies are already involved in crafting the list of civil society organizations who will participate in high-level meetings, and this paragraph is not needed to affirm this existing role. Furthermore, this paragraph potentially changes existing good practice on selecting civil society to participate in UN high-level meetings. We collectively have a lot more work to do to increase civil society participation across the UN, and will continue these efforts for future modalities and meetings. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States for his explanation of vote. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of China.
主席女士，很遗憾，联大再次在缺乏共识的情况下，通过高级别会议组织模式决议。很遗憾，非政府组织参与联大高级别会议的既有规则与制度安排再次被无视。联大多年来在无异议原则问题上形成的惯例再次遭到破坏，会员国的共识和团结再次被削弱。鉴于上述，中方将不参加执行段第10段的协商一致。主席女士，中方一贯支持非政府组织合规有序参与联合国活动，对联合国工作积极建言献策。同时，联合国是由主权国家组成的政府间组织，联大多年来在无异议原则问题上形成的惯例，既为非政府组织参加联合国会议提供便利，也有助于维护联合国的政府间性质。所谓有关做法会阻止非政府组织参与联合国工作的说法，是少数国家的错误解读和刻意曲解。中方呼吁会员国继续进行广泛深入讨论，最大限度寻求共识和团结。中方愿继续同各方就此进行开放、建设性协商，在维护联大规则和惯例的基础上，确保非政府组织积极参与联合国工作，并发挥应有作用。谢谢主席女士。
I thank the distinguished representative of China for her statement. We have heard the last speaker. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Syrian Arab Republic. Go ahead.
شكرا سيدتي الرئيس. يشكر وفد بلادي الوفدين الدائمين لغيانا واليابان على جهودهما كميسرين لمشروع القرار المعنون نطاق الاجتماع الرفيع المستوى المعني بالتغطية الصحية الشاملة وطرائقه وشكله وتنظيمه. يؤمن وفد بلادي بأن الصحة شرط مسبق للتنمية المستدامة بأبعادها ونتيجة من نتائجها ومؤشر من مؤشراتها. ولذلك فإن عقد الاجتماع الرفيع المستوى المعني بالتغطية الصحية الشاملة يأتي ضمن إطار الجهود الهادفة لعدم تخلف أحد عن الركب وبناء عالم أكثر صحة للجميع، فضلاً عن تسريع وتيرة الجهود المبذولة في سبيل تحقيق التغطية الصحية الشاملة بحلول العام 2030، بما يكفل اتباع الناس أنماطاً حياتية صحية وتعزيز الرفاهية لصالح الكافة في جميع مراحل الحياة. السيد الرئيس، لقد انخرط وفد بلادي بإيجابية وشفافية وبحسن نية في عملية المفاوضات على مشروع القرار المعروض أمامنا اليوم، وكنا في كل خطوة نشدد على ضرورة أن يتم اعتماده بتوافق الآراء حرصاً منا على صون قواعد الإجراءات الناظمة لعمل الجمعية العامة، وخاصة فيما يتعلق بمشاركة المنظمات غير الحكومية في اجتماعاتها، غير أنه تم للأسف ومن جديد إدخال لغات جدلية تم التصويت عليها فيما يتعلق بقاعدة عدم الاعتراض، تلك القاعدة التي أثبتت وأظهرت نجاعتها خلال السنوات العشر الماضية. للأسف لم تلقى مشاغل بلادي وعدد معتبر من الوفود آذاناً صاغية. نكرر مجدداً سيدتي الرئيس بأنه لا نرغب بأن يفهم مشغلنا هذا بأنه اعتراض على مشاركة المنظمات غير الحكومية في اجتماعات الجمعية العامة، كما أشار الزميلان الموقران من المملكة المتحدة والولايات المتحدة، لكننا نرى بأنه يجب أن يحكم مشاركة المنظمات غير الحكومية التي لا تتمتع بمركز استشاري لدى المجلس الاقتصادي والاجتماعي قواعد الإجراءات النافذة في الأمم المتحدة نظراً للطبيعة الحكومية الدولية لهذه المنظمة. إن رأي دولة واحدة أو اثنتين فحسب هو كاف، ويجب أخذه بالاعتبار عند اتخاذ أي قرار في منظمتنا هذه. غني عن القول بأن الممارسة طويلة الأمد لمفاوضات الأمم المتحدة هي أنه عندما يتعذر تحقيق توافق في الآراء بين الدول الأعضاء فإن أفضل مخرج هو العودة إلى اللغة المتفق عليها مسبقاً، وهو الأمر الذي تم تحديه خلال عملية المفاوضات واليوم، وبالتالي تقويض التضامن الذي يجب أن يحكم عملنا. ولذلك فإن وفد بلادي ينأى بنفسه عن توافق الآراء فيما يخص الفقرة العاملة 10 بصيغتها الحالية، وخاصة فيما يتعلق بقاعدة عدم الاعتراض. كما يطلب وفد بلادي اعتبار هذا البيان كجزء من المحضر الرسمي لهذه الجلسة. شكراً السيد الرئيس.
I thank the distinguished representative of Syria for her statement. And now I give the floor to the distinguished representative of Belarus. Go ahead, please.
Благодарю, госпожа председатель. Республика Беларусь поддержала принятие резолюции. Рассматриваем предстоящее заседание высокого уровня в качестве значимого элемента реализации повестки 2030. Отмечаем усилия координаторов в рамках процесса по поиску консенсусного решения и учета позиций всех сторон. Выражаем озабоченность в связи с проявлением некоторыми делегациями полярных точек зрения на один и тот же вопрос. Рассматриваем это как непоследовательный, селективный подход. В настоящее время в зале Генеральной Ассамблеи часто говорится о прозрачности и эффективности сотрудничества с неправительственными организациями. В связи с этим у нас вызывает удивление негативное отношение некоторых делегаций к необходимости соответствия неправительственных организаций требованиям для участия в заседании высокого уровня. Руководствуясь интересами государств-членов ООН во взаимодействии с неправительственными организациями, Республика Беларусь всецело поддерживает предложенную в параграфе ОП-11 процедуру. Изложенный в параграфе ОП-11 подход всего лишь констатирует то, что происходит на практике. В связи с этим Беларусь присоединилась к просьбе группы стран о постановке на голосование поправки Л-124 и проголосовала против нее. Что касается оперативного параграфа 10, Беларусь решительно поддерживает устную поправку по удалению ставшей постоянным предметом голосования формулировки для принятия Ассамблеей окончательного решения по вопросу об участии в заседании высокого уровня в параграфе ОП-10. В связи с этим выражаем озабоченность продолжающимися попытками продвижения неконсенсусных и противоречащих сложившейся практике формулировок в отношении участия представителей неправительственных организаций. Такие действия приобретают системный характер, что идет вразрез с принципами многосторонности. Делегация Беларуси всецело выступает за соблюдение устоявшейся практики участия неправительственных организаций без консультативного статуса при ИКСОС, а также право государств на определение круга неправительственных организаций, принимающих участие в межгосударственных процессах. Поэтому Республика Беларусь последовательно заявляет о диссоциации от представленного оперативного параграфа 10. Благодарю за внимание.
I thank the distinguished representative of Belarus for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Namibia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. My delegation wishes to make this brief explanation of vote after the vote in respect of the amendment earlier presented by the United Kingdom. My delegation abstained on the amendment, not because we do not see civil society participation as necessary and critical. The Namibian government has consistently supported the participation of civil society in the work of the General Assembly and the United Nations as a whole. CSO participation has always been an important pillar of the work of the United Nations, with CSOs often being at the front line of initiatives and doing the work on the ground. However, we were concerned about the language in OP 11 as it was ambiguous and did lack clarity, and sought to set out a role for the Secretariat that is new and required further consideration. We also, however, did see the text presented by the co-facilitators as a genuine attempt at bridging the gaps between the various positions, and we thank them for this valiant attempt. As the world starts to rebuild in what will hopefully be an equitable and transformative way from COVID-19, it is imperative that this assembly be able to speak in one voice on critical matters such as this. We believe we must all now strive to show flexibility and compromise, the principles which form the very bedrock of this organization. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Namibia for her statement. We have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote after the vote. And now I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Her Excellency Caroline Rodriguez Burkett, Permanent Representative of Guyana to the United Nations, and His Excellency Ishikane Kumihiro, Permanent Representative of Japan to the United Nations, who ably and patiently conducted the discussions and complex negotiations on the draft resolution in informal consultations. I am sure members of the Assembly join me. I'm sure the members of the Assembly join me in extending to them our sincere appreciation. The Assembly has thus concluded this stage of its consideration of Agenda Item 131. The General Assembly will resume its consideration of Agenda Item 136, entitled Impact of Rapid Technological Change on the Achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and Targets, to take action on draft resolution issued as document A/75/L123. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of Mexico to introduce draft resolution A/75/L123. The floor is yours.
Señor presidente, tengo el honor de presentar el proyecto de resolución A/75/L.123, titulado Impacto del cambio tecnológico rápido en la consecución de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible y sus metas, para la consideración de la Asamblea General. Este proyecto de resolución, que por tercera vez México tiene el honor de presentar, atiende a una serie de necesidades apremiantes en el contexto digital. Al día de hoy, 57% de la población mundial carece de acceso a Internet. Ante el confinamiento ocasionado por la pandemia de COVID-19, esto significa que más de la mitad del mundo se ha quedado desconectada, se ha quedado atrás. Algunos han podido adaptar sus modelos de negocio, de estudios y de vida. Sin embargo, la mayoría se ha enfrentado a la exclusión digital en un momento en el que la conectividad es vital para la recuperación. El cambio tecnológico rápido se refiere no solamente a la ciencia, tecnología e innovación, sino a las capacidades humanas e institucionales para adaptarnos a este cambio. Junto con las vacunas, la conectividad global es otro elemento sine qua non del desarrollo humano en el siglo XXI y merece toda nuestra atención. Como lo hemos comprobado de forma exponencial estos últimos años, las tecnologías nos pueden ayudar a cumplir con los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. El manejo de la tecnología, sin embargo, también implica desafíos que se deben abordar en esquemas de cooperación internacional. El texto del proyecto que presenta México, mi país, el día de hoy, toma en cuenta los principales avances multilaterales en la materia durante los últimos 2 años. Identifica formas para cerrar las brechas digitales y aumentar el acceso a Internet. Exhorta a los Estados miembros y otras partes interesadas a garantizar un acceso universal y asequible al Internet para 2030. La construcción de capacidades e infraestructura es indispensable y también es urgente. Por eso, la resolución hace un llamado a invertir en las habilidades digitales de nuestras poblaciones, especialmente de las personas en situaciones de vulnerabilidad. Este proyecto pone de manifiesto las contribuciones del cambio tecnológico rápido en áreas importantes para el cumplimiento de la Agenda 2030. Estamos hablando de salud, de energía, agricultura y seguridad alimentaria, gobernanza, educación, economía, finanzas, empleo, bienestar e igualdad de género. En otras palabras, consideramos que el cambio tecnológico rápido deberá incidir positivamente y de forma incremental en favor de la inclusión de todas las personas, tanto en línea como fuera de línea. En este contexto de recuperación de la pandemia ocasionada por el COVID-19, estamos en un momento clave para fortalecer la cooperación digital internacional. Si ya hemos reafirmado que la Agenda 2030 es una hoja de ruta para la recuperación sostenible, ahora nos corresponde unir esfuerzos para acelerar su instrumentación. Nada de ello será posible sin la plena inclusión digital a la que todos aspiramos. Señor presidente, la hoja de ruta del secretario general para la cooperación digital contiene una serie de recomendaciones importantes para la adaptación al cambio tecnológico rápido. En este texto, los Estados miembros hemos tenido la oportunidad de dialogar sobre algunas de ellas y hemos propuesto algunas acciones puntuales a favor de una mejor cooperación digital. México considera que las Naciones Unidas debe jugar un papel prominente en esta materia. Por ello, consideramos vital el trabajo del mecanismo de facilitación de la tecnología, así como de la Oficina del Enviado del Secretario General para la Tecnología. Señor presidente, México agradece a todas las delegaciones que participaron activamente en las consultas abiertas, transparentes e incluyentes. Juntos, hemos logrado un proyecto de resolución integral que, más allá de tomar en cuenta los avances institucionales de los últimos 2 años, refleja las prioridades de la comunidad internacional frente a los impactos socioeconómicos de la pandemia. Reiteramos nuestro aprecio a todos los Estados miembros que contribuyeron con ideas y con lenguaje a este texto. Estamos convencidos de que el multilateralismo representa la mejor vía para salir adelante y cerrar las brechas digitales. El texto que habremos de adoptar representa la voluntad colectiva de aprovechar el cambio tecnológico rápido a favor de todos, del desarrollo sostenible, de los derechos humanos, de la gobernanza y de la inclusión. Muchas gracias. Gracias, señor presidente.
I thank the distinguished representative of Mexico for her statement. The Assembly will now take a decision on draft resolution A/75/L84 entitled Impact of Rapid Technological Change on the Achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and Targets. For your information, the draft resolution has closed for co-sponsorship. I now give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Madam President, I should like to announce that since the submission of the draft resolution and in addition to the delegations listed on the L document, the following countries have also become co-sponsors of A/75/L123. Armenia, Plurinational State of Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, Georgia, Indonesia, Israel, Morocco, Nepal, Pakistan, Paraguay, Peru, Philippines, Singapore, Turkey, and Ukraine. If any other delegations wish to co-sponsor A/75/L123, please signify by pressing the microphone button. Madam President, I see Guinea, Cameroon, Botswana, Rwanda, Honduras, Palau, Bangladesh, Angola, Lebanon, Tunisia, if the delegations of Honduras and Bangladesh turn off the microphone button if they are done. I see no other delegations. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/75/L123? It's so decided. Yeah. Before giving the floor for explanations of vote after the vote, may I remind delegations that explanations of vote are limited to 10 minutes and should be made by delegations from their seats. I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you. Madam President, the United Kingdom is committed to harnessing the power of rapid technological change for sustainable and inclusive development, and we welcome Mexico's efforts to bring this issue to the General Assembly. The United Kingdom would like to express our appreciation that negotiations have produced a more focused text. We are happy to join consensus, but would like to take this opportunity to share our views on some aspects of the text. We believe the value of this resolution is its focus on the impact of rapid technological change on achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. We do not think there is value in duplicating language in existing initiatives, which is why we called for a streamlined approach and questioned the need to repeat language from other resolutions. We will continue to advocate for this approach in future iterations of this resolution. The United Kingdom underscores the value and principles of multi-stakeholder cooperation. We firmly believe that we must do more to harness the strengths of governments, international organizations, the private sector, civil society, and the technical and academic community. We must work to include all stakeholders in these efforts if rapid technological change is to contribute to achieving the SDGs. We also fully support language recognizing the importance of closing the gender digital divides and reaffirming the role of digital technologies in enabling women and girls to fully participate in political, economic, social, and cultural life and exercise their human rights. Human rights should be protected online as they are offline. We strongly supported language emphasizing that adaptation to rapid technological change should be considered with respect to the realization of human rights and fundamental freedoms. The United Kingdom recognizes the importance of state obligations to uphold international human rights law and to make national policies compliant, as well as language on the relevance of the right to privacy, as set out in Article 17 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. We would have also liked to see greater recognition of all other rights, including freedoms of opinion and expression, peaceful assembly and association, among others. We underline our commitment to ensuring the rights of children online and offline. Our understanding of OP4 is that efforts to protect children online must fully comply with international human rights law. We thank Mexico again for their commitment throughout negotiations and for advocating for this important topic. The UK looks forward to continuing to constructively engage on this issue. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the UK for her statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United States. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. The United States is pleased to join consensus on this resolution and appreciates Mexico's efforts to facilitate it. We would like to share our views as they pertain to this resolution. The United States dissociates from PP13 to the extent that the paragraph promotes technology transfer or distribution of intellectual property rights that is not both voluntary and on mutually agreed terms. The United States firmly considers that strong protection and enforcement of intellectual property provides critical incentives needed to drive the innovation that will address the health, environmental, and development challenges of today and tomorrow. The United States understands, with respect to this declaration in general, and PP13 in particular, that references to dissemination of technology and transfer of, or access to, technology are to voluntary technology transfer on mutually agreed terms, and that all references to access to information and or knowledge are to information or knowledge that is made available with the authorization of the legitimate holder. The United States underscores the importance of regulatory and legal environments that support innovation. The language in PP13 concerning technology transfer does not, from the U.S. perspective, serve as a precedent for future negotiated documents. The United States understands the reference to the right to privacy in OP4 to refer to the right not to be subjected to arbitrary or unlawful interference with one's privacy, as set forth in Article 12 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Article 17 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. In OP8, the United States does not consider the list of specific platforms, technologies, or goals as comprehensive, nor do we believe it accurately describes the priorities of the international community as highlighted elsewhere in this resolution. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United States for his statement. And with this, we have heard the last speaker in explanation of vote after the vote. May I take it that it is the wish of the General Assembly to conclude its consideration of Agenda Item 136? It's so decided. The meeting is adjourned.